Hello guys, in this video we want to connect all of our data to the MongoDB. So instead of using sample data from a TypeScript file, we want to be connected to the MongoDB. Follow this tutorial if you want to see how. Okay, here is the roadmap for this lesson. At the first step of this lesson, we want to move all the APIs into their corresponding routers. By doing this, we are going to give our project a professional look. Let's do it together. First of all, from the Explorer, open up the backend. Here inside the SRC, right-click and select New Folder. Set its name to router, then press enter. If you look at the server.ts file, we have APIs for two models. First, for the foods, second, for the user. By creating routers, we are going to move all the APIs related to the foods into the food router and the APIs related to the user router. Let's start with the food router. Right-click on the router folder and select New File. Here write food.router.ts. Then go to the server.ts file and cut all the APIs related to the foods and put it inside the food router. As you can see, we have a couple of errors, but we're going to fix it. Don't worry about it. First of all, we don't want to use Express app anymore. We want to use an Express router and use it by our main Express app. So here you need to write, first of all, you need to import router from Express. Then you need to create a constant with the name of router that is equal to router that has been called. Okay, so here we have an Express router. The rest of the flow is completely similar to the app. You just need to copy this router and put it instead of app here, 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 and here. Here for the sample foods, press Ctrl dot and select import from module data. And for the next error, that is for sample tags, press Ctrl dot again and add sample tags from the data.ts. Here we go, there is no error and everything works perfectly. Now that we made this router, we need to use it inside the server.ts. Let's go inside the server.ts and here write app.use. We want to use this router on this address /API/foods. And for the second parameter, we need to pass food router that we didn't add yet here. Let's go at the top and import it. Import food router from router. It's better to call it router. So I want to change the name of the router to routers. Yes, so imports will be fixed. Close the Explorer. Import food router from routers/food router. As you can see, we have an error. It says that this module, that is our food router, doesn't have any default export. It is right. Yeah, we forgot to put export default router at the bottom of our router. At the end of creating your router APIs, you need to export your router so you can use it as the default import inside your server.ts. As you can see, there is no error anymore. But look at here. Isn't it similar for you? It is the beginning of all of our food APIs. It means when you send a request to the server that starts with this API, Express will move the request into the food router. So in fact, anything that we write inside the food router is after /API and /foods that we set inside server.ts. So we need to remove all the /API/foods from the food router. So the first one will be only a slash, that is for getting all the foods. We have the search. Here we need to remove /API/foods from here. Remove it from the tags. Remove from the tag, finding a single tag, and remove it from finding a single food. Now that we created our first router on the backend side, let's check out the browser and see if it works just like before. As you can see, we still have all the foods, all the tags, the search works, and we can see the food page. These are all the APIs that we moved to the food router. Let's go and create the second router that is related to login page. Okay? Close the food router and go to the Explorer, right click on the router and select new file. Create user.router.ts and go to the server.ts. Copy this API, go to the server.ts, then copy this login API and the generate token response function. In fact, you need to cut it, then paste it inside the user router. Once again, you need to import router from express const router equal to calling the router of the express, and instead of app here, use router, then press Ctrl dot here to import the sampled users. And for the error part that is related to JWT, import JWT from JSON Web Token. So there is no error here. Now cut this /API/users from here, then go here and put app.use and paste /API/users and set it equal to user router. Then again, we forgot to export default router from the user router. We need to do it. And we need to come over here inside the import user router from routers folder and user router. We can remove these unnecessary imports from here. Here we go. Now our server.ts is much cleaner than before. So we know that we have a couple of APIs inside the food router. We have a couple of APIs inside the user router. Let's test the login to make sure that the user router works as expected. Jane@gmail.com 12345. As you can see, the login process works flawlessly. So we successfully did our first step. In the second step, we want to create the MongoDB Atlas. You may ask why we are not going to use local MongoDB and we are using MongoDB Atlas. The reason is installing MongoDB is different in different operating systems. And MongoDB Atlas is fast enough in the development process. So I think using only MongoDB Atlas could be enough for this whole project. For creating the MongoDB Atlas account, you need to go to mongodb.com/atlas. Here, if you don't have an account, click on try free. Otherwise, if you have an account, click on sign in. After clicking on the try free, you will be moved out to the register page. Here you can register using your Google account, or you can enter your data by your hand. Here you can enter your email, your name, your last name, and your password. Check the I agree checkbox and click on get started for free. When you see this page, it means you've got a new email from the MongoDB to verify your account. So go inside your email account and click on verify. So you will see a page like this that says email successfully verified, and click on continue. After a couple of seconds, you will see a page like this that says, welcome to Atlas. What is your goal today? Set it for your goal. What type of application you are building? I want to select some random thing here, but for what is your preferred language, select JavaScript. Click on finish. Here it asks about a deployment option. Select the free one and click on create. On this step, it asks about cloud provider that you can select AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, and the region that you can select. You don't need to change anything, just click on create cluster. Here it says invite users. I don't want to invite any user for now. Click on skip. At this step, it asks about username and password for accessing to your database. I want to set the username to my name, and I want to click on auto generate secure password. Click on create user. So now this user will be used for database access. But what about the network access? The IP addresses that could use your MongoDB server. So click on network access. Here click on add IP address. since I don't want to limit the usage of my MongoDB server and it's not credential for me, I click allow access from everywhere. That enters 0000/0. Don't use it if you want to use your Mongo Atlas for your business because it makes your database accessible easier. Click on confirm, then go to the database here and click on connect. Select connect your application. Then here we go. We have the URI to have access to our MongoDB Atlas. Click on this copy button, then come back to the code. Here we want to create the env file because we don't want to send the credential data to our Git repository. I will tell you how right now. Open up the Explorer, then right click on the src folder and click on new file. Set its name to .env and press enter. As the first entry here, I want to write Mongo_URI. Set its value to the value that we copy from here. But this address is not enough. We need to change two parts inside this address. The first one is the password. Close this, go to the database access, find the user for your current project, click on edit password, click on auto generate secure password, click on copy and select update user. Remember, if you have several applications connected to a single database account and you do this password changing, you're going to lose connection for all the other projects. So you need to change their password too. Since I have only one project connected to this one, I can easily change its password. So now that we copied the password, we can come back to the code and instead of this password part, you can copy the generated password here. It is great. It will be connected to the MongoDB Atlas, but our database name is not what we want. I want to set it to food mine. Okay, we have our environment set up, but we cannot use this env file directly because it needs a package with the same name .env to work. But while we're installing the .env package, we need to install a couple of other packages. Mongoose package for creating our models and working with the MongoDB. We're not using MongoDB driver directly because it is not rich enough to handle security problems. We need to handle them all by ourselves. So I want to use something like Mongoose that I can create my model with some specific types. Then I can pass my values with that structure and I can save it inside the database. bcrypt.js for saving the password inside database because we don't want to save password directly inside the database for security reasons, because for any reason somebody have access to our database, we could have access to all the users of our system and it can destroy the system. So by creating encrypted passwords inside the database, we are going to keep our system safe from this security leak. We already installed the JSON Web Token, so we don't need to install it. And Express Async Handler, we use it because if we use the default async inside our APIs, it's not going to have a consistent behavior. Sometimes it fails, sometimes it succeeds. You know what I mean? We need Express Async Handler to make it consistent. So let's remove the JSON Web Token from here because we don't need it. Okay, from the view menu, select terminal. Make sure you are inside the backend folder. Now let's try to install all of these packages at once by using npm install mongoose.env space bcrypt.js and express-async-handler. Now press enter. So all of them will be installed inside our project. Close the terminal. Now before configuring the database using Mongoose, we want to make sure that we have our Mongo constant that we defined inside the env file. So we need to go to the server.ts file. Here at the top of the file, press enter. We need to add an import .env from .env. Now we need to call the config function of the .env. From this moment, anything that we put here, we can have access to it using process.env. So if I write Mongo_URI, I can have access to exactly the same value that I define inside my .env file. Very nice. Remove this from here. Now I want to create a config file for connecting the Mongoose to the MongoDB Atlas. So from the Explorer, right-click on SRC and create a new folder with the name of config. Or it's better to say configs. Right-click on it and select new file and write database.config.ts. Here we need to import connect and connect options from Mongoose. We need it for making a connection to the MongoDB server. Here we need to export a function to the outside. So write export const db connect that is equal to a function that calls this connect function with the value of process.env.mongo_URI. As I told you, this will get the value that we defined inside the env file. For fixing this error, it says that it could be undefined. For fixing that error, we can put an exclamation mark here. So we are telling the compiler that this value is always available. It will not be undefined. As the second parameter, we need to pass the connect options. So create an object as connect options. Now come inside the object, press enter. For the newer version of MongoDB that we are using, we need to set use new URL parser equal to true and use unified topology to true. This connect returns a promise, so we can write .then here. The first function that we pass here is for the success part. So we write console.log connect successfully. And the second parameter is the error. So we create a handler for showing the log of the error inside the console.log. So after the connect is finished, in two cases, if it is successful, it will show a connect successfully. Otherwise, it shows an error. Now we need to use this function inside the server.ts. So go inside the server.ts and import dbconnect from configs database config. Press enter, it will be imported here. And on the next line, we need to call this function. Now when we try to run our project, it will try to connect to the database. If we go to the terminal, we need to see this connect successfully log. So from the view, select terminal, go to the one that is connected to the backend. As you can see, we have connect successfully here. So to this moment, we are connected to our Atlas MongoDB using Mongoose. Perfect. Close the terminal. At this moment, we want to create our Mongoose models. So open up the Explorer and right-click on SRC, new folder, and create the models folder. Right-click on it and create a new file with the name of food.model.ts. Here we want to create the food model, but let's close all of the unnecessary tabs here. Here for creating the Mongoose model inside TypeScript, we need to create an interface of that model for having the auto-completion. Secondly, we need to create a schema. And at last, we need to create the model. First of all, let's start with the interface. Write export interface food. Its structure is completely similar to the food interface that we have on the front end side. So we can copy that class and change it a little bit. So from the Explorer, go to the front end, SRC app, shared models, select food. So copy everything from here, go to the food model and paste it here. Close the Explorer. Here, remove all the marks. Okay, this is exactly the interface that we want to work with the food. Now let's create its schema. So scroll down and here write export const food schema. Here we need to define a new schema. As you can see, there is no schema. We need to go up and import it. Schema from Mongoose. And here we need to pass the type of our interface. Then we need to call its constructor. And as the parameter for its constructor, we need to define all of these fields and their corresponding types inside MongoDB. They are a little bit different. For example, types inside MongoDBs start with uppercase, but inside the TypeScript, it starts with lowercase. Let's do it. The first item is name. We don't start from the ID because ID is a default member of the schema. Not ID, but underline ID. But by using some tricks, we can convert underline IDs to these IDs. So we can use them easily without using underline ID. The name type is a string with uppercase and it is required equal to true. Now copy this multiple times. Set the second one to price. Its type is number and it is required to inside the database. This required means if you don't pass the value for the price, the Mongoose will throw an error. The third one is the tags with the type of string array. Defining a string array inside the Mongoose is like this, not like this. Favorite is of type boolean. And instead of required, we can set its default to false. So if we don't set the favorite, it will be false by default inside the database. Next one is the stars, and it is of type number. It is required. Next one, image URL of type string, and it is required. Next one, origins of type string array. Put it inside square brackets. It is required. And the last one is cook time, that is of type string, and it's required is true. For the tags, we shouldn't set it's required to true. So all the fields are required except the tags and the favorite that has a default value. Now for having this ID available, we need to use virtuals. And virtuals are kind of values that will not be saved on the database. They will be generated based on the value inside the database. By default, if you set the virtuals to true, Mongoose will set underline ID to ID, and that's what we want. So we need to set the virtuals to true. For setting the virtuals to true, we need to add the options. Mongoose gives us the value with two functions. The first one is toJSON that we configure it here. We set its virtuals to true. So now if we send the values using the Mongoose from the API to the client, we'll call toJSON and we are going to have the ID field. The other one is when you get a value from the database and you want to work with it inside your code. That is toObject. So we set its virtuals to true again. And for each model, I want to set when they are created and when they are updated. For doing this, you don't need to put created and updated here. You just need to pass the options of timestamps to true. So each time you create a new food using the food schema or update it, it will set the timestamps automatically. It's a great feature and I really like it. Now that we have our food schema, we need to create a model. This is the third step and the last step. So here write export const food model equal to model that we don't have it yet. Let's add it. It comes from the Mongoose. It's a function that gets the model type, that is food interface, the name of the model inside the database, I call it food, and the schema, that is food schema. Here we go. Now that we have our food model, we can do all the create, read, update, and delete operations to the database. But before going to do that, I want to create a user model too. So close this one and go to the Explorer, right click on the models and create user.model.ts. Here go to the food model and from the top, copy these two because we need the schema and the model here too. At the next line, let's create export interface user. We have the same process for the user, so go to the client side and find the user model, copy everything from here and paste it inside this interface. On the server, we don't save the token inside the database, but we have a password with the type of string. Let's remove all the exclamation marks. Here we go. I want to put the email and password near to each other. So we have ID, email, password, name, address, and is admin. We have the TypeScript interface. Let's create the Mongoose schema. Let's write export const user schema is equal to new schema with the type of user inside angle brackets and the fields of the database. First one is the name with the type of string with the required value of true. Second one is email with the type of string again. It is required, so required true, and it should be unique too. So set it unique to true also. Here we can duplicate the name and use it for the other items. Password, its type is a string and it's required is true. Address, string and required. But the last one is admin is of type boolean. So the Mongoose structure is ready. Let's go for its options. Let's set the timestamps to true. So we are going to have created at and updated at fields inside the database. For having the ID, set to JSON and virtuals to true and to object virtuals to true. Put a semicolon and let's create the model. Easiest part, export const user model. Call the model function, pass the name of the model inside the database, and it's a schema that we defined at the top. We forgot to pass the type, that is user here. Don't forget to do that because you will lose the beautiful auto-completion of TypeScript. Now that we created our user model and food model, we need to seed them inside the database. And for doing that, we need to get the values from data.ts and put it inside the database. For doing this, we need to add two APIs inside the food and inside the user with the address of /seed. Let's start with the food router. Open up the food router, then go to the top of it and duplicate this API. Set its address to /seed. And here, since we want to have an async function, we need to add express async handler to this project. So import async handler from express async handler. Very good. Now cut the handler part and write async handler, and inside it paste it and put an async at the beginning of it, because the connection between the database and our code is asynchronous. Instead of using async, we can use then. That makes the code a little bit messy. I prefer to use async function that makes our code much more cleaner. First of all, before seeding the database, we need to make sure that it is not already seeded. I just want to count the number of items, and if it is more than one, it means it is already seeded. So write const foods count equal to await food model dot count documents. Here we can check if the foods count is more than 0. It means there is something inside the food collection inside the database. We need to send the response.send that seed is already done. And we need to return. We don't want to go down, okay? Let's remove this. Otherwise, we need to create all the sample foods inside the database. So write await food model dot create sample foods. Then at the end, we need to send the text to the outside. Seed is done. Now I want to call this address inside the browser and check if the database will get all the values that we have inside our data.ts. So here we go. Here, close all the unnecessary tabs. Close this one and click on Browse Collections. As you can see, we have the foods. As you can see, we have these foods here. That is the name of our model plus an S, because it is a list of documents. Now let's go inside our project. Instead of 4200, we want to use 5000. That is the address of the backend /API/foods/seed. Now press enter. As you can see, we have seed is done. Now if we go to the MongoDB Atlas and if we click on the refresh here at the top right, we could see that we have our 6 items inside the database. So the seed is done. Now if we rerun the seed, it says that seed is already done and it works perfectly in both cases. And nothing will be added to the database if there is already something inside the database. And that's what we want. Very good. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the users. So copy this seed from the food router, open up the Explorer, open the user router, and at the beginning, add the seed. We need to import async handler from express async handler. Oh, I had a typo here. There is no E for the async handler. Let's fix it for the food router too. This one and this one, okay? Here, instead of the food model, we want to use the user model. So write user model and press enter. So it will be imported at the top. Copy the user model and use it from here. Copy the user model and use it for the create part. Instead of sample foods, we want to use sample users. And here, instead of the foods count, let's write users count. Very good. Let's test it inside the browser. Now here, instead of this /API/foods, use /API/users. Then press enter. As you can see, seed is done. Let's go inside the database and refresh it. As you can see, we have the users, and inside the user, we have our 2 users. Once again, if we rerun the seed, we can see that it says seed is already done. And there will be no new items inside the database. So we just seeded the foods and users inside the database. Now we need to go inside the code, and I want to make the code to use database instead of using data.ts. I want to start from the food router and from getting all the foods. Here at the beginning, press enter and write const foods equal to await food model dot find. The await doesn't work here because await only works when we have an async at the beginning of our function. And as I told you, using the async function directly results in inconsistent behavior. So we cut it async handler, and inside it we put our async handler. Here we go, calling the find from the model without any parameters, gets all the values from the database. And that's what we want. And here, instead of returning the sample foods, we want to return the foods that we got from the database. Now let's check out the browser. Go to this tab and here write 4200 because this is the address of client side. As you can see, we have all the foods without a problem. If you refresh the page, it will load the data. Now let's do the same thing for the tags, for the search, and for the food page. So the first one is search. The search are a little bit different because we directly want to do the search inside the database. We don't want to get all the foods and search through it. So it will be a little bit different. We need to use the way that the MongoDB wants us to use. First of all, we need to create a regular expression. The reason is that we want to create a search case insensitive. For doing that, we need to create a search regular expression that is equal to new regular expression regexp. We need to pass the request.params.search term as the first parameter and the single I as the second parameter to make this search term case insensitive. So instead of making 2 lowercase, both name and search term, we just need to create a regular expression in this way. Now remove all of these things and write const foods are equal to await food model dot find. Inside here, we want to pass a condition, and we need to pass the condition using an object, and we need to say its name should be $regular expression. Okay, this is regular expression operator, and we need to pass search regular expression as the regular expression of the name. So when we call this, it will pass the search term as a regular expression that is case insensitive into the find, and it's going to find the food if we pass the name of the food either in lowercase or uppercase. Once again, put an async here and put this whole thing inside async handler. Okay, now if we go to the browser and search for example, meat, it's going to find the meatball. Very, very good. It works like a charm. Okay, next step is creating the tags. So inside the tags API, press enter. So inside the tags API, put an async here and put it inside async handler. Now at the beginning of it, write const tags equal to await food model. So from the food model, we need to do aggregation. So we call aggregate instead of find. We need to pass a couple of things. The first one is unwind operation that we want to be done on tags field. So when you want to pass a field, you should start it with dollar inside quotations. So we do unwind. What this unwind does, let me tell you. Assume you have two foods that each food has 3 tags. After unwind with the tags, you're going to have 6 foods that each food has a tags property with only 1 item. So this converts the tags that is an array into just a normal field with only 1 value. In this way, we can make a group and find similar ones and count them. Okay, very good. Let's go for the next step. Inside the aggregate, that is group. That the group ID is the tags field, and inside the group I have another field other than ID with the name of count that I want to do sum operator with the value of 1. So for each tag we have a sum with the value of 1, so it will add a new item to the count. Here that we have the tags, here that we have a group with the ID of tags, with the count of number of tags, we can project it and make it similar to the structure of the front end. So as the second step here, I want to do project. It doesn't have any ID, so we set the ID to 0. We define a name that is equal to underline ID. If you say why the name is equal to ID, it comes from here because we set the tags name equal to ID. So here, when we are defining our projection, we need to use the same. We need to do the same thing for the count. We want to project a count field with the value of $count. After doing the aggregation, I want to sort it based on the count field. It is equal to -1. -1 means descending and 1 means ascending. So -1 means from the highest count to the lowest count. Here we go. But this is not enough. This will just give us a name of the tag and count of the tag for all the items that we have inside the database. We need another one that we define it here. Const all is equal to, its name should be all and its count should be await food model dot count documents. So we need to have an all that counts all the documents inside the database. So at this moment, the all count will be 6. Now I want to add the all at the beginning of these tags. So we write tags dot unshift all. Unshift is exactly the opposite of push. If you push something to an array, it will be added to the end of it. But if you unshift something to an array, it will be added to the beginning of it. We want to add the all to the beginning of the tags. Now we just need to send the tags to the client side. I know it was a little bit hard, but I think you got the idea. Now if we go to the browser and refresh the page, we will see we have all the tags here coming from the database, and they are not coming directly from some predefined tags that we defined inside data.ts. Now they are dynamic. Here I want to work on finding the foods based on the tag because it is using data.ts. Let's connect it to the database. Here inside the tag, remove everything other than response.send and write const foods equal to await food model.find when their tags are equal to request.params.tag name. As simple as this. Put the async here and put the whole thing inside async handler. Here we go. Let's check it out inside the browser. As you can see, and it's getting the data from the database. If you want to make sure that the data is coming from the database, you can go to the database, go to the foods, and remove, for example, pizza pepperoni. Okay, we removed it. Now we have only 5 items. We don't have 6 items. If we come back to our website and refresh the page, you can see that the all and fast food is changed, and it is not 4, it is 3. And we have only 3 foods here. Now we can make sure that it's using the database. And the last thing that we want to connect to the database inside the food router is the food page. As you can see, it says food not found because the ID is changed, and this is an auto-generated ID from the database. So we need to connect finding the food by ID to the database. Let's go. Here remove these 2 lines. Before the response.send, write const food is equal to await food model dot find by ID. You don't need to use find, you can use find by ID, and you can use request.params.food ID. Put an async here and put it inside the async handler. Let's check out the browser and refresh the page here inside the food page. As you can see, we have the food here. So it's coming from the database. Let's test it with some other food. Okay, it works. And we have only 5 foods, not 6 foods. Here, the last thing that we want to connect to the database is the login. So let's log out and click on login. Here, we want to connect it to the database. So we need to go to the user router. Go to the user router, and inside the login, we need to change a couple of things. First of all, we need to put this handler inside an async handler. So async handler and put it here. Don't forget to put the async keyword at the beginning. And now we just need to change this part that gets the user from the sample users with some code that gets the user from the MongoDB. So let's remove this and write await user model dot find one with this email and this password. Everything else could be the same. It was super easy, right? Let's check the result. Let's write jane@gmail.com and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click on login, and as you can see, the user is logged in. Okay, this was for this lesson. On the next lesson, we are going to implement the register page. You've been watching Code with Nasir, and I hope to see you next time.